So before we begin, I have read the comments. I know how much you all want a new episode of Kingdoms of Greymane, and I will get around to that as soon as I can. Maybe not 3 months of building for a single episode, but I'll see what I can do. In the meantime, I do have a tutorial for you. Just bear in mind this is an advanced tutorial and not a block by block build tutorial like I normally do. Instead, I actually want to teach you the steps and techniques I took to build these mushroom houses from my last video. Just, trust the process and you should be able to build any kind of mushroom. Big, small, short, long. This is getting out of hand. First the log, now this. Let me know what kind of mushroom you're gonna build. Okay, so first of all, it's important to note that you can use any kind of block palette you prefer, but for this video we're going to stick with the original design. So here's a list of all the different block types we're going to be using, and of course you can always just swap out these blocks to your liking. Now the first and most important step is to build the stem of the mushroom. So for now we're just going to be using some mushroom stem blocks to build a relatively large base. The base should be at least between 6 and 7 blocks wide, then we're going to gradually make the stem thinner to about 2 or 3 blocks wide as we progress upwards. The trick here is probably not to overthink the process, just make sure you have enough space within the mushroom to not only make for some decent interior space, but most importantly to be able to fit a ladder up to the top of the mushroom. Now you also need to try and aim for a height of at least 15 to 20 blocks, and right at the top of the mushroom just extend the stem outward by 1 or 2 blocks to create a more natural shape. This next part is quite straightforward, just add some smooth quartz stairs around the edges of the build to give the stem a bit more definition. Now again, it is very important to remove any excess blocks from inside the mushroom. You can even use stair blocks to your advantage just by replacing some of the exterior blocks. I hope that makes sense, but you're basically just tidying everything up while also trying to make as much space as possible. So the next step is to attach a small building to the mushroom. It's not entirely necessary, but it's a nice defining feature that will also give you some extra space to work with. We're going to be placing 6 pillars, 3 blocks apart and 5 blocks wide, connecting the longer sides with spruce planks and filling in the gaps between each pillar with stripped oak wood. Then we can build the roof just by using a combination of dark oak slabs and stair blocks to create the basic outline on both sides of the building. Then you can just fill in the gaps using spruce wood and finish off the house using some trapdoors for all the extra details. It's honestly a very simple design and you should be able to recreate this exact build block by block. At this point you can even throw in some windows, decide where you want your entrance to be and add any other details like lanterns, plants, pots and anything else you can think of. One thing I like to build is one of those porch shades. I think it's actually called a pergola, I don't know, but it's a very simple design. You can even use campfires for this, but I kind of prefer the simple striped version. Totally up to you. To finish off the outside areas, I'm going to build a back door for the garden, building some farmland as well as some extra details. I don't want to get too carried away with this, but I think you kind of get the idea. Okay, so going back to the mushroom stem, you can add a bit more detail by using some white concrete powder and scattering a handful of buttons just to add a few imperfections to the mushroom. And finally, about halfway up the stem, you're going to build a window. It's a very simple design. The glass is actually attached to the brick wall. That way you get an extra block of space inside the mushroom. I mean, it's not much, but still, every little helps when it comes to such a small build. Okay, now trust me, do not panic. This next step is going to be a bit tricky for me to explain, so what I'm going to do is show you how to build each layer for the top of the mushroom. So the first thing you need to do is build a ring of packed mud roughly around the center of the stem, and I've marked each block with an X just so that you can see precisely how to build this. Once you've built that first ring, just start placing a second layer right on top using a combination of packed mud and brown mushroom blocks. Then moving on to the third layer, again going around the mushroom, this time ignoring the corners. The fourth layer should be pretty simple, we're just going around the edge, slowly filling up the space. And moving on to the fifth layer, it's pretty much the same thing, but this time we're starting to leave a few gaps along the front. This will allow the mushroom to start curving inward and give us that perfect shape. Okay, so actually this shouldn't be too difficult to follow. We're just placing 2 blocks in a line all the way up to the center of the mushroom. You do need to repeat this exact step on all 4 sides, creating a sort of pyramid shaped top. Then all you have to do is use those 2 block lines as a guide to connect the last 2 circular rings. Hopefully I've explained that well enough for you to replicate. Bear in mind, you don't really need to be super precise with this. I'm sure it will turn out just fine, even with a few imperfections. Now before we fill in the gaps, let's actually connect the mushroom to the stem. So go back to the first layer and place trapdoors right around the bottom edge. Once you've got that done, using spruce slab, we are once again going around the edges of the mushroom, and we have to repeat this exact same process 4 times until you've pretty much covered up the entire space. Also, make sure to fill up any empty space on the inside, and this will just act as the top floor to your mushroom house. Then finally, all we have to do is connect the mushroom together using stem blocks as well as smooth quartz stairs. Okay, so at this point you should be quite proud of yourself because we've pretty much done the bulk of the hard work. Everything else should be quite straightforward, and hopefully your mushroom house should look somewhat like mine. So now all we have to do is start covering up those gaps using a combination of mud brick slabs and stair blocks, basically just placing them and scattering them all over the top of this mushroom. The next thing you can do is pick one side of the mushroom and build a small quirky shaped chimney. You can just use a combination of different stone blocks and finish it off with trapdoors, campfires and dark oak buttons. Now this has to be my favorite part. To really bring the mushroom house to life, we're just going to scatter a few glowberries as well as a few lanterns just hanging down from the top. I think this really helps finish off the build, finally completing the exterior. Of course, feel free to decorate this further however you want, just by adding banners, armor stands, any other decorations you think might work. And I guess when it comes to the interior, obviously it's totally up to you how you want to decorate this, but I will give you a few pointers just to help you out. Now as soon as you walk in, the first thing you can do is get rid of this extra wall, just to get as much space as possible. I'm also going to change the floor to some packed mud and start tidying up the ceiling, closing everything off and just separating the different textures. Now one really important step is building a ladder up to the top level. One trick you can use is to grab some trapdoors and place them right up to the center of the mushroom stem, then just placing the ladder right on top. I mean, this also gives you some extra space, and I think it's just much better than using full blocks, but again, it's totally up to you. Of course, you can now just continue the ladder up to the 2nd and 3rd floor. I mean, there's not much of a 2nd floor, but you can always expand the project and make the mushroom house even bigger. Now for the top level, you can either choose to keep this as an open space or close it off to create separate rooms. What I like to do is make sure the top level actually opens up to a fireplace, which should connect to the chimney we built on the outside. So here's a nice and simple design for some inspiration. But I do have to say, if you really want some inspiration for the interior, I would highly recommend you watch my last video where I pretty much built an entire mushroom village, showcasing some really intricate work, and I'm pretty sure you'll find plenty of ideas, not only to finish this build, but maybe even get you started building an entire village. By the way, this mushroom house is also available to download for all Patreon ranks, just in case you want to take a closer look. So again, I have to thank you for all your support, and I hope to catch you in the next one.